Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore positive. This is Preakness week, and we do the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. We're going to be two really great crab cake places. We're going to be at Fagley's at Lexington Market on Wednesday this week. I will have the Maryland Treasures to give away. Luke will be stopping by, and that they moved the Oriole game. Maybe Luke won't be stopping by, and then I'm thinking about it. GBMC, Walk a Mile in Their Shoes, happened last month. This is for their safe domestic violence and child protection program, which we support. I had orthopedist Ronald Delanois on this week to talk about making sure that I'm a hip guy, but I don't want any hip replacements. But if you have to have one, GBMC is the place to take good care of you. Also, our friends at Farnan and Dermer, the Comfort Guys, taking good care of me. Zach joined me last week at Planet Fitness, or my wife has been getting up before the butt crack of dawn every day, lifting weights at Planet Fitness in Timonium. So if you see her there, say hello to her. If you were in Costas Inn in Timonium on Friday afternoon and you saw a Philadelphia horse racing legend amongst us, Mike Marlowe, my one-time boss, mentor, and I get together once a year and tell old newspaper stories, and he shames me about AI, and we usually get a crab cake or whatnot. Dick Jerardi showed up. Luke Jones showed up. It was a whole bath over at the spa on York Road in Timonium, wasn't it, Dick?
It was a fun afternoon, Nestor, no question. Definitely enjoyed it. Haven't seen you in a couple of years since our trip to Joe's Steak and Soda Shop in Fishtown, north of Center City, Philly. And I usually see Mike about once a year around the Preakness. So, yeah, it was great because I'm not going to be there for the race this year. So it was cool to come down and hang out with you guys on Friday.
All right. So the headline is Dick Jerardi skips Preakness and Derby winner skips Preakness, right? Like, why are you skipping the Preakness?
Yeah, it more. I'm kind of waiting for it to come back to Pimlico. To me, look, I'm glad they're running it, and it's fine. Look, I've spent many days at Laurel, but it's going to be a difficult day for everybody. They can only have like 4,800 in there. I just assume watch it from home rather than deal with the chaos. And I'll be back next year when it goes back to Pimlico because to me, the Preakness and Pimlico are synonymous. It hasn't always been there. I mean, if you go back in history, there were years where they actually rented it in New York at a track called Gravesend, like way, way, way back in the day. But yeah, it was very nostalgic for me last year, Nestor, wandering around the old plant, knowing that when I left, I was not going to see it anymore because it's now been knocked to the ground. And it was time. I'm glad that they knocked it down. And hopefully the new Pimlico will be cool. I'm looking forward to
Well, sitting in a sports betting emporium and OTB over Costas with you on Friday, I was taken aback by how many people knew who you were, but the fact that you weren't even looking up at like who was running at Churchill on a Friday afternoon. You were not focused on the races. You didn't have a form. You didn't have any of that. I wanted to ask you because I've never asked you this because we're always like focused on the race or I'm pissing on the Magma people or the Stronic people or how this thing could fall into such disrepair. And Donna Brothers joined me this week. Randy Moss is going to be on. So I'm doing some of my friends. I can't call Clem Florio right now and get his perspective on this, or Charlie Lamb or Rich Petro or any of our other friends. When's the first time you went to the track and where did you go and what was the situation? I'm assuming it was in the 50s or 60s, right? I mean, your background in all of this, but I came into this in the 70s where Seattle Slew affirmed Aladar spectacular bid. We can go through that. And
it.
Secretariat. I was
Yeah.
five for Secretariat. I remember Seattle Slew vividly. 76 on. I'm all in on every Triple Crown there's ever been. I've been to 35 Preaknesses, whatever, a handful of Derbies, couple of Belmonts as well. My dad didn't bet. My dad stood in soup lines in Scranton, Pennsylvania in 1929 in the Depression. My dad was not horse racing centric at all. My dad didn't know how to read a form. So my dad was baseball, basketball, boxing, like every other white guy from Scranton, Pennsylvania in the 20th century, late 1900s. Your Ali stories are like my dad would love all of that. My dad hated Ali, but like the fights and all of that. But the horse racing thing was something that skipped my family as well as golf. My dad, no golf in Dundalk, no lacrosse. We don't do lacrosse. I know that was in your neighborhood where boys lad and then all of that. Um, horse racing for you, how did it come to you? Because I always want to ask that question. And I think also what I'm really looking for you to do is wax poetic for the Uncle Dick Jerardi to little nasty Nestor and tell our audience what it used to be like and why you fell in love with it and why you spent a lifetime in this.
So my first experience, Nestor, was at Pimlico when my oldest brother took me. I don't remember how old I was, and I only remember one thing about the day. I sat in somebody's seat in the grandstand that had a newspaper on it. I did not realize what that meant. That meant that that seat was saved. So I remember some older man coming up and like yelling at me, and I'm like, I don't know, 12 or whatever I would have been at the time. And, being like, oh man, this is outrageous. I don't remember anything more about the day. I don't remember having gone back for years. I remember being in Ocean City in the summers and having some high school friends say, hey, look, we know who the winners of every race at Ocean Downs are going to be. I said, wow, that's interesting. You just meet this guy on the boardwalk and he tells you who's going to win. I said, all right. So, we did that a couple of times. Of course, it was nonsense. And then when I went to college at the University of Maryland, College Park, I always tell people I majored in journalism and minored in poker. In reality, it was probably the opposite. I spent more time playing poker than I did going to class. But at some point, my poker friend said, you know what? You really got to go to the racetrack. And I remember going to like Rosecroft, the old harness track on the Capitol Beltway. And eventually I started to work my way toward the flat tracks. And I think my first Preakness, providentially enough, was 1973. I went with also my brother and his then new wife, and we sat in the infield. And again, some of my high school friends were there, and I bet 50 to win on Secretariat. And I was so excited. I said, "Look at this! I bet 50 to win. I really."
50's a lot of money in 1973.
Yeah, and you know how much I won? $15. It was 3 to 10. You got back. I got back $65. I didn't really know much of anything, but I was kind of intrigued, and little by little, I just got more interested. And I knew people, guys I bet sports with, that knew about the track, and they would say, "Hey, this horse is going to win." I realized pretty quick all the information I was getting was nonsense. And then really what triggered it for me were two books. One, Picking Winners by my mentor and great friend Andrew Beyer, and then Betting Thoroughbreds by Steve Davidowitz, who used to work at the old Turf and Sport Digest on, well, I think they were around York Road and Cold Spring, way back, way back in the day. Just two brilliant books by brilliant writers. And I said, you know what? I think I want to do this. I had a journalism degree, but I was driving Jimmy's cab at the time. And I went and did some research at the old Salima room in the Bowie Library that Beyer suggested to learn how to do speed figures. And little by little, I learned. And there I met, I'm actually at the library doing the same research I was doing, Nestor, was Ray Tannehill, who was starting forward for what was then Towson State College, Division II basketball team, and Jerry McIntosh, who became a TRPB agent at the track and then an FBI agent. And they became great friends. And Ray and I gambled together for years until he passed away in 2015. And anybody in Maryland that ever went to the track knew Ray. He was as good as it gets. And then over time, as I started going to the track every day, I would learn more and more and more about it. And again, Beyer was a mentor to me. I'd met him in the press box.
You were a baseball and football nerd as a kid. You weren't a horse racing guy.
100%. Yeah, huge
So
Colts.
this was taking your love of the Colts and Orioles and putting it into a place where you could wager and
Correct.
analyze things. This
Yeah,
is
no,
the
that's right.
journalist. This is your intellect of trying to decipher information, basically.
Yeah,
Right?
precisely. And back then, Nestor, it was a lot simpler than it is now, because if you had a set of Beyer speed figures, very few people believed in it or took the time or understood how to do it. And you would get prices on horses back then that you would never get today, because very few people either wanted to do the work, knew how to do the work, or understood what it was anyway. So back then, I was actually having full meets where I was getting back. Let's say I would wager, I'll put it out. Let's say I'd wager 1,000 at the meet. I'd win 1,000. So I was getting like 100% return on investment, which is insane, which never could happen today. I mean, it's just the game is much too complicated. But because I was interested in the betting part of it, I started to then read up on the history of the sport, learn more and more about it. And I said, well, wait a second, I have this journalism degree. at some point I probably need to get a real job. And fortunately, Mike Marlowe, our good friend who I grew up with in Armagh Village, just right next to Rogers Forge, was already working at the News American at that time. And I did a couple of freelance stories for them. And then, as you know, when the old sports first began in 1983,
83 to 84 lasted
right
1 year and
right
a day,
before the
right?
Orioles' last World Series win, I was hired as the racing handicapper slash writer. I had no idea what I was doing.
Summer of 83 is when this would have been.
Yeah,
Okay.
thankfully, Rich Petro was at the News American, and he really helped me get through those early days because I had no idea what I was doing at all. But yeah, I was
Hey,
picking
this
one.
is how you do it. You do it
Yeah,
just like this. And that's
he was
pretty good,
phenomenal.
Petro, right?
And he had all these. He was a self-taught computer wizard. He knew how all that stuff worked before anybody even knew how to turn a laptop on. And yeah, so that's kind of how I got into it, and just over time, it became a bigger and bigger part of my life. And the gambling part is what got me into it, and obviously the stories that were kept me into it. And now it's some of each. I write one story a week for a little website here in Philly on horse racing, and I gamble like you said. I didn't even look at anything on Friday. I would say out of the 365 days a year, I'm probably gambling on 20 or 30 of them. It's mostly the big race days, or if I have a race I saw and there's a horse I'm interested in, I'll put him in what we call our stable mail at DRF. Then when the horse is running again, I'll know about it, and then I'll look at it and say, is this a bet or not? But yeah, there were years where I went to the track every single day in Maryland and then in Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and I knew everything about everything. That's no longer. I can't do that anymore. Don't have that level of concentration, interest, or time.
So, what qualifies something for you to make a bet on it?
I need to be able to see the race. Like I saw the Derby this year, Nestor, perfectly. I knew what was going to happen. I knew when it was going to happen. I even kind of knew how it was going to happen. And I don't know if people know this yet. It probably hasn't gotten out much. But if you remember, I like the non-Bourbon, the Japanese horse. I understood where he would be in the race, and he was exactly where I thought he was going to be. I knew where he was going to make his move. And when I'm watching the race, I was convinced that not only was he going to win, he was going to win by like 5 lengths. If you remember, he took the lead to stretch, opened up 3 lengths, and then all of a sudden he just gets passed by a maiden, Oselli. And I was expecting this to come out at some point. Well, it came out today. He fractured his knee in the race. That's why he got tired at the end. Obviously, he was hurt. But he would have won easily. But that's the nature of the game. You can do everything right, and stuff can still go wrong. He was 12-1. I just bought a car up here the Tuesday before the Derby. Let's put it this way: much of the car was going to be paid off if the non-Bourbon had won the race. But when I like something and the price is right, I now have the wherewithal to fire, and I will fire.
12-1.
12 to
That's
1.
12 to
Yep.
1. It makes you fire.
Yeah, I mean, in a circumstance where I could see it, we can get into it later, but like the Preakness Saturday, I can't see that race at all. I have no feel for it. I don't know who's going to be where. I don't know anything about it. So it's not a race I'm going to be able to gamble on because it's just too, for me, it's just too difficult. And that's the one thing I learned this years ago. If you don't see it, there's another race. There's another day. There's something out there, and there are going to be times where you just don't like anything. And I'm really good at that. If I don't like anything, I just don't bet. But I need, and when I see something and I think I see an edge, then I might spend an hour and a half on a race, looking at everything, looking at tapes, looking at videos, trying to look back to see what's the trainer trying to do, how is he trying to get ready for this race, what's the circumstance, all that kind of stuff, and that's just from doing it all these years. I mean, there are circumstances where I will see something that I feel fairly confident that 99.9% of the people looking at this won't see it because they haven't been doing this for 40 years like I have. And that's the edge you have if you're doing anything, whatever it is, for a long time, right? What is the old do it 10,000 times, right? You get better at it. Of
I've been
course,
doing this for 35 years. If I said to Luke today, you have to host a show, he'd be like, what?
right,
You know,
exactly.
it's a different job. It's like somebody
Sure.
said to me, hey, you could do Sandusky's job doing play by play. I'm like, you underestimate Sandusky and overestimate me
Yeah,
because
no,
like you do color on basketball. I'm qualified to do color on a Ravens game, to be the
yep.
third man, to be the
Yep.
Howard Cosell guy
Sure.
in there with me and Brandon Stokely or Femi Ayandejo, but like play by play, calling a race. The people at Pimlico had me come out about 15 years ago to try to call a race.
Impossible.
Unbelievably, it's just a different skill set. And that's why I think your horse racing thing, by the way, Dick Jerardi is here, man, myth, legend, Baltimorean. Even though you think he's from Philly, he ain't. Do you want to tell your steward story and your first story in Sports First in the News
Sure.
American? Or
Sure. So,
because it has to
again,
do with racism, and I think it's a
yeah, it was,
fascinating story for being a guy like you who was just a yippy guy on the rail driving a cab betting
yep,
races, and you're
yep.
writing a story and you find out that like real hokey pokey's going on at the track.
So the very first story I did, Nestor, was in 1980. Let me see if I got this year right. They changed the parimutuel wagering at racetracks around the country. It used to be, this is kind of, I mean, this is crazy now. There were the front side of the track is where you would bet, and then if you won, you would go around to the back. There were different people that sold the tickets and cashed the tickets. It's kind of hard to believe now, right? Well, they came up with this new system called the ABC system, all betting and cashing, where you could bet and cash at the same window, and it's obviously been that way ever since. So I actually wrote a story about it for the News American, because I had seen it down. I was in Florida in the winter of 1979, and wrote a story about it. I don't know, either later that year or whatever. And whoever edited the story never bothered to call me and just ruined the story. They just made the story into something that it wasn't at all. I mentioned in there that it might take out of action stoopers. Stoopers are the people that look around for uncashed mutual tickets. They stoop and look on the ground to see if somebody dropped a winning ticket. Well, now it'd be less likely to happen because you go to the same place. And the person, whoever edited this thing, then changed the whole story into about stoopers, which wasn't what I was writing about at all, and ruined the story. And I'm going, and I got $25, and I'm going, do I really want to do this? Well, I believe the very next story I did in 1980, there was a huge controversy at the Preakness. Genuine Risk, the great filly, had won the Derby, and then she comes to the Preakness, and she's coming around the far turn, and Codex, trained by a virtual unknown named D. Wayne Lucas, comes around the far turn with Angel Cordero and kind of pushes her out a little bit, pushes Genuine Risk out a little bit, and then Codex runs away and wins by like 5 lengths. And there was a claim of foul, and there was no change. And they ended up appealing it to the Maryland Racing Commission. There was a big deal, and they ended up no change. And I said, well, wait a second, why isn't there a story about the Maryland stewards? What is the deal with these people? What is it that they do? These are the people that
Who
after
is the
races,
commission? Who are the humans, right?
well,
Like
right,
literally.
exactly. Who are these people? What do they do? And I'd actually and I was gambling all the time. That's all I was doing was gambling and driving a Jimmy's cab.
So you want this to be on the up and up, as we always say with John
Correct.
Martin from the Maryland Lottery, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I had a specific incident where they disqualified me out of about 3,000, which was a lot of money back in that time, on just a horrible call with no explanation. It just all of a sudden your horse is out and you lose. So I said, wait a second, I want to do something on this. The Genuine Risk thing was in the news. And I just got beat out of 3,000. So I had a vested interest in it. So I went to I don't even remember who the people were at the News American at the time, but Mike Marlowe was my conduit. I said, hey, look, this is going to be an interesting story. And they said, yeah, do it. So I did it, but I don't think they were expecting me to do it the way I did it. And I talked to a bunch of people. I watched the stewards. There's a porch at Pimlico where one of the stewards or more comes out to watch the race, and then the others are watching it on TV. Well, I noticed over time, Nestor, nobody ever came out to watch the race. I'm going, well, that's not exactly doing your job. So I had that in my notes. And then I went to talk to Fred Caldwell, who was the chief steward at the time. And he was an old school guy. I mean, he'd been around for 100 years. And I'm listening politely. And he, at one point, he offers to me, he goes, you know what? And remember, Angel Cordero won the Preakness on Codex. He's from Puerto Rico. And he goes at one point, he says, you know what? I don't really like those Puerto Rican jockeys. And here I am, I mean, I've written like one story in my life, but I'm going, you can't, you're not supposed to be saying that. That's not good. So among the many things that I reported when I basically said, "Hey, look, this thing is a fiasco. There's nobody in charge of this. They just get to do whatever they want. There's no accountability at all. And oh, by the way, the chief steward says, I don't really like those Puerto Ricans." So that was the story. It created a huge amount of
I bet it did.
controversy at the time because
1984,
nobody,
82, 81.
yeah, nobody had ever written anything like that in the local papers. And it was like, whoa, who is this kid? What is he doing? And that was really the first significant story I ever wrote. And then that kind of parlayed that into the sports first thing, which, as you know, only lasted a year. But for me, it was awesome. I got to make all these mistakes. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but it gave me enough good clips that when a job opened the following year at the Philadelphia Daily News, I got hired, and the rest is history.
Dick Jerardi telling stories about Puerto Rico. Any Venezuelans on the horses? By the way, I had Donna Brothers on, and you've been to so many derbies, and I've been to several, but I think the NBC coverage is wonderful every year. Like for a helicopter in for me for doing what I do, knowing people like you and the Marty McGee's and the Clem Florios and the Randy Mosses that come on this week, and for what the Preakness should be and the Triple Crown should be, and what NBC bets on it to be when they put the hockey games around it and all that stuff. 2 weeks ago, I was going to go over to Costas and watch the race, and I didn't because I said to Jen, I'm like, let's watch NBC's coverage because it's really good. It sets up, all the connections and the stories and what's going to make me cry and like all of that. Eddie Olczyk, the whole deal. So I sit and I watch it, and Donna Brothers does her thing, and I know Donna, she comes on every year. Every year, she gets me either to the point of choked up, a little wet, or sobbing. This year it was sobbing with Ortiz that these jockeys and the people and the emotions of the race. Does any part of this resonate for you, or is it just you gamble on it, you cover it, it's horses? I
No,
mean,
no, no.
does the majesty ever hit you of these creatures?
100%. Oh yeah, no. Look, the two things I love about the game are the gambling, which is now number one for me because I'm no longer writing about it regularly, and the stories. Look, I covered, as you know, college basketball for years, 25 Final Fours. Everybody always asks me, well, what's your favorite sport to cover? I said, it's not even close. It's horse racing because there's so many great stories and the access is awesome. And Donna, this will be her last gig for NBC, unless she's doing the Breeders' Cup, which maybe she is. I don't know. But she's coming to the end of she was announcing this is going to be her last Derby, and she's done a wonderful job for so many years. And you're right about the coverage. And Randy Moss is a good friend. He's a part of the Buyer Figure team and has been for however long we've been doing it together. So yeah, NBC does do a great job. But yeah, I love that. I love that stuff. I mean, how do you not love a story like Smarty Jones, right? I mean, it's a can't miss. Or a Fleet Alex, or then the Barbaro story, which was such a high in the Derby 20 years ago now. We ran the best Derby I ever saw live. Now, I wasn't there in 73. And then what happens to him in the Preakness in the subsequent months? Is he gonna survive or not? I mean, those stories, they resonated with readers, Nestor, and you didn't have to care about horse racing. People that had, we've all had like dogs or cats at home, so we can all relate to what happens when something happens to them. That was the Barbaro story. Everybody got it.
Dick Jerardi is here. He's still covering horse racing better than anybody. Tell everybody what you're on to right now, because I know you're here to promote some stuff. I got to take care of Jimmy up in Philly, and this is still a big race to bet on for bettors, right?
No question. BetOnline.ag. I do some shows, including yours, around the country for them to promote what they do. The prop bets will be up shortly, but the odds line's already out there on the Preakness. And one of the many great things about the Preakness, Nestor, regardless of no Derby winner and doesn't have the pop that it would have some years, they're going to bet over 100 million on the Preakness Day card. It's one of the 3 or 4 biggest days in the country annually, Derby winner or no Derby winner, because it's the second jewel of the Triple Crown. NBC devotes hours to their coverage, so people are naturally attracted to it. It's a good time of year. There's not going to be any playoff games going on at the same time. They had the great lead in after the Derby with Game 7 of the Sixers and the Celtics. So yeah, there will be tons of gambling. There's some really good horses from Parks coming down there on Saturday that I would recommend to people. We can get into that in a minute. And of course, the Preakness itself It's a very intriguing race. I have no concept of who's going to win, but yeah, get to betonline.ag. It's a phenomenal site for sports betting on the races. You can lock yourself into a price, and the props will be up there soon. And everybody loves prop bets, including me.
Well, what makes a prop bet feel nice for you? Give me a
Yeah,
little betting advice for the people who don't
yeah,
bet.
you're looking for an edge. I mean, there was an edge 2 weeks ago in the Derby, Nestor. I think if I didn't mention it on your show, I mentioned on a lot of shows. The over under on the time was 202.5 for the mile and a quarter. I recommended all week to go under because the surface at Churchill was so fast all week. It was, I mean, you knew unless something really disastrous happened, they had to go under 202.5. Devastating. It was the lowest buyer figure in the history of the Kentucky Derby. It was only a 95. They ran really slow. It was really kind of a slow bunch. It was kind of an optical illusion when you saw those horses closing. More, it was the horses in front slowing down, but it was still under 202.5. That's the kind of prop bet, if you're paying attention to what's going on, that you can cash.
Dick Jerardi's cashing tickets and doing things. So you mentioned that like the amount of money on all of this. Out at Costas, they're building all of this stuff and they're in the middle of this construction zone. And Pete told me like it's going to be mobbed out at the OTB in
Oh, yeah.
Timonium because of the hats and the fact that only 4,800 people are going. My wife and I are going to the race on Saturday. So thanks to David Joseph and the Gulfstream people for helping us out with that. But I'm assuming I'll get parking somewhere in Laurel, if not in Bowie. But I'm going to the race. I don't. It's not going to feel like the Preakness. It's going to feel like I went to Laurel on a crowded day. I mean, yeah, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, for the people that don't know that haven't been to Laurel, there's no infield because there's a lake. And it just doesn't have the footprint that Pimlico has. It's just not nearly big enough. So they're limiting it to 4,800 on Saturday. Yeah, I think there's a couple of places that are sold out. There's others that are not. I'm not exactly sure what the
People
setup
around
is
town
gonna
are having
be.
parties. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
doing a big.
which is
There,
great.
there, there are people there's boats sailing in the water trying to
Sure.
get people out to watch the race on a boat.
Yeah, and again, the whole sport has changed, Nestor. I mean, when I talked about the first story I ever wrote was about these new pari-mutuel betting system and tickets. Well, I haven't had a ticket in my hand in years. I bet on my phone or on my laptop, and 95% of all money in horse racing is bet somewhere other than the racetrack. So yeah, the parties, everybody will be there. They'll have a phone. They have an ADW, advanced deposit wagering place. Like, it could be anywhere. It could be First Racing has their express bet, and Churchill Downs has Twin Spires, and
Well, people go out to the
betonline.ag.
OTB at Costas, and I see there when you
Right.
left, there were a bunch of guys. Like 10 minutes after you left, there were
Mm-hmm.
15 guys around the television to our left screaming at a Churchill race.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
it.
so people do like that vibe of going out and I mean, Costas is there to serve you in Timonium if you're
Yeah,
anywhere around here, but there's a vibe all day, every day of, oh, Costas is in here, but and the racetrack's right there and you're at the track. There is a vibe about that for
well,
sure.
for sure. Look, I love the convenience of being able to bet easily, obviously on your phone. But what I miss, and what I've missed for a long time, was when you first went to the track. I mean, I mentioned Ray Tannehill, Steve Marzo, Jerry McIntosh, all guys that went to Towson, and then Maury Wolf, who is an absolutely legendary gambler, Andy Byer. But I used to hang with these guys, not Andy so much, but the others at the track every day. And a lot of my education was talking to them. What did you see? Because everybody sees something a little differently, and then you incorporate that. I absolutely miss that. But I'm telling you, Nestor, there were probably, I don't know, maybe a decade where none of us missed a race in Maryland. I mean, that we saw everything. And back then, to get to see it, you needed to be there, right? There was no replay shows. There was no calling up the replay on your laptop. There was no internet. None of that existed. It's just so much more convenient now. If you're willing to do the work, you can find stuff that you never could find before. But yeah, I really do miss that. I mean, even now, like Mari and I, who's still a very good friend, lives in Florida part of the year, in Northern Virginia. We'll talk about those days and how much fun it was as we were all kind of learning how to play the game, understand the game, understand the sport. And yeah, you make mistakes, and we all made a ton of them. You think, and you're young and you're in your 20s and you think you got all the answers, and then you find out you really don't.
Dick Jerardi is here. I'd have you break the race down, but it doesn't even like I have so enjoyed this. Not as much as my lunch with you last week and watching you devour that bowl of Maryland crab soup and those two crab cakes broiled. I knew you play like you could be from Dundalk. You got a little bit, you got a little rough around your edges a little bit. But then I see you order these broiled crab cakes, and I know you're uptown. That's
Yeah,
when I'm Dundalk and you're Towson. There's no doubt
yeah.
about it.
It's just kind of a sad commentary, but yeah, you're right. I probably should have been from Dundalk. You and I would have gotten along
Dude, I
just fine.
went up there to Philly with you and I ordered tomatoes and lettuce on my cheesesteak, and you
Nah,
guys just
nah,
almost threw me out. You
nah.
almost threw me across the river to Jersey for doing that.
There's certain rules that just cannot be broken. No lettuce and tomato on cheese sticks. That won't do. That's for hoagies, not cheese sticks
I'm a
or
tourist.
subs, as they call them in Baltimore.
I'm a tourist in your town, but I'll never be a tourist in this town here.
No, you
Dick
will not.
Jerardi is a legend. He's here on behalf of give the web address again so I get everybody to the right place to bet.
So betonline.ag, phenomenal website. Our buddy Jimmy Shapiro does a great job. We promote them around the country before all these Triple Crown races. Again, there'll be prop bets up there on the Preakness, odds sitting up there on the Preakness at the moment. And it's a phenomenal site, betonline.ag. Go there, all your betting needs. You'll get them all. Sign up, betonline.ag.
I'm back in Philly on the 28th of May for Triumph at Camden. So you'll see me up there. Cheesesteaks and Italian beef will be had, but never a tasty cake. He is Dick Jerardi. I am Nestor. It is Preakness week around here, and we are Baltimore positive. Stay with us.